Hello, we have a fourth line day. We're in gate 43, the gate of insight and breakthrough. And the fourth line is called the one track mind. This is a line name that is also a keynote for all fourth lines. We talk about the fixedness and the one trackedness of externalization. This one track mind can drive you mad, actually. It can drive you completely bonkers with its knowing because it has a knowing that is very difficult to get across to anyone else. And it's really, really fixed on that one knowing, whatever it happens to be. And they can be very persistent in that knowing. The exaltation, the over-reliance and stubborn obsession with one's mental abilities in the face of recurring obstacles. This design, giving mercurial mental gifts, may, though rarely, succeed. A stubborn reliance on one's unique insights that demands focused mental ability to be properly conceptualized. They're saying, I know and you don't. Even if somebody is standing there telling them really calmly and clearly that they're wrong and explaining to them why 1 equals 2 and not 76, and they still insist on their I know. Their knowing can be extremely stubborn. They're very fixed in their knowing. They may be of enormous value. They may be a Galileo who is shunned their whole life. They may have real brilliance within them, or they can just be wreckers, which is, of course, the other side of the coin. You get everything in this spectrum. But the key for people to have this line, Ra would say to them, okay, so you're fixed on this knowing, so just get it very clear so that other people can grasp it. If you cannot explain it, you will be shunned. And if you're fixed on it, you appear to be obsessive. You have to be able to explain it. And this isn't, of course, just for the fourth line. It's a keynote for the whole 43. You have to be able to explain your insight, or you will never have a breakthrough. This is a lot like the 28 in the fourth line that's called holding on. You just keep on banging through. You're holding on for dear life, and you keep on expressing your knowing. Now, of course, the whole thing about individuals is that even if they're absolutely, totally, completely wrong, it is still going to take them a while to be able to accept that because they still have to hear that within themselves. Ra said that he knew situations like this very well. Somebody would go up to him, he had the 4323, and they would scream in his face, figuring that that was the only way that he would actually hear them. And what they screamed at him, of course, it had to be valid, it had to be justifiable. But in the moment that they were screaming at him, they had no idea whether Ra knew that what they knew was justifiable. They didn't even know if Ra was hearing them. They just kept shouting at him, and he said that they would just get louder and louder, and then eventually they would walk away from the whole experience feeling really angry with the assumption that they'd been banging their heads against a brick wall. What they didn't know was that Ra, with his individual mind, would then process everything that he'd heard. And at some point in his own mind, he would come up with his own version of what he had been told, so that he hadn't been influenced by it, not directly. And he could still correct himself from that place if that was what was necessary. So rationalizing is part of the individual process. It's one of the things individuals do. And they will never accept on the inside that anybody is right about them and their knowing. Even if they acknowledge that someone is right about them and their knowing, they will turn it into something that is theirs so that they can accept it. That's the only way that they can take that in. And it's a bit of a handicap in a way to the mutative force because it denies any kind of influence whatsoever. And so, yeah, it can be said to create a dilemma in that way. The detriment, a belief in inherent right action based on limited knowledge that shuns advice, the vanity to attempt expression without depth. These are people who know the minute they come into the world. If they could speak when they were lying in their crib, they would have told their mothers what a lousy job they were doing. I know what you need to do with me. Can you do it this way? They will claim that authority the moment they come into the world. And this line, of course, it doesn't need fixing. No line needs fixing. What this line is saying, really, is that you have to enter into relationships correctly. And then it doesn't matter that that's what you do and that's your expression, because it's right for you to do it that way. As an individual, you're not here to take advice. You're here to be an arrogant little knower and to push your I know out into the world, whether the world wants it or not. Well, that's just tough. And if they don't like it, you can hide and try again another day and learn the right timing. And maybe you should learn how to explain it a little better, work on your communication skills so that eventually you can get your knowing across. Individuality works very much out of being a stranger of consequence. The power of mutation at its greatest is on first contact. If you don't mutate people when you meet them, you don't mutate them at all. So if you end up trying to be in their corner, trying to make friends with them so you can continue trying to mutate them for years and years, it's not going to work. The individual has its greatest power on its first opportunity. So if you think about that in terms of knowing and getting to make an explanation to somebody, then when you explain your knowing, it's really important to keep this in mind. Because if it doesn't work, you're going to be at a disadvantage in explaining that knowing for a very long time, both inwardly in the sense that you really do not know yourself, and then outwardly in your reputation, because you will be seen as someone who doesn't really know. And this is a really tricky position for a fourth line, because fourth lines are designed to be the most influential with their friends. You know, this isn't the third line or the fifth line, both of which are maybe better equipped for getting in and explaining the insight and having the mutation and then getting out again. Individuals have to be very careful that the timing is right. An individual who is in the happy part of their melancholy, who has followed the nature of their design, who has started their knowing from the beginning, they will be able to explain themselves without punishment. Even if the explanation is not satisfactory, there'll be enough of those who grasp the essence of it that they won't treat you as a freak and push you away. The moment you can explain yourself as an individual, you have a different aura. You know, somebody who really doesn't know, it's in their aura, you can sense it. The totality is looking for the gift of awareness in form. Yeah, this is a genetic imperative for the totality, to find awareness in form. And this comes out in many ways. You know, many esoteric things such as handwriting analysis or the reading of palms or phrenology, that kind of thing. And there's a magic that is inherent in the form. This process of explanation, it's the only way in which the form is changed. And without explanation, there's no transformation in the form. None. We're on the mental plane, all of us. We can't escape it. It will not be escaped from. It is here with us until the end. It's an awareness that we carry, and there is no place to go in our process until we are at peace with the mental plane. There is no configuration where the ajna is not part of our design. There is no mutation coming down the line before we finish here on this plane that is going to take away the mental awareness. Mutation always disturbs the peace. So when mutation comes, it must be able to explain itself on the mental plane, not just in the world physically, but to be able to express and explain its nature on the mental plane so that the mind and the mental world mutate as well. It's an ongoing process. Gate 23 in the fourth line is called fragmentation. This is the grounding to the line of the one-track mind. We're in the upper trigram now, of course, and we have people who need to transpersonalize their knowing. Didn't say that very well. They must transpersonalize it. They are here to externalize. And the only way that knowing is established is through that transpersonal activity, because knowing is refined in that way. In the third line, the knowing is either right or wrong. It either mutates or it doesn't. It's very clear cut. It's very different in that sense. Through the transpersonal, the knowing is something that grows, and it grows through the interaction with others. Fourth lines always need the other. They need the other for their network. They need the other to make friends with. They need the other to externalize to tell their knowing to. And they can be fragmented in this approach, or they could be one-tracked. The moon has been in gate 51 since 0703 this morning, the gate of shock, the gate of arousing, the individual gate in the heart center. It moves into gate 42 at 1607, the abstract gate of growth that is also the gate of endings. There's no such thing as growth that never ends. Everything is part of a cycle of beginnings, middles, and endings. There are some things that traverse this cycle quickly, and others that may take centuries. But eventually, everything that is, isn't. The moon moves into the sacral gate 3 at 0110. This is the gate of ordering, difficulty at the beginning. And it meets Pluto, which is in gate 60. So forming the channel of mutation. Yay! More individuality, which you could have guessed, I'm sure, from the title of this channel. It's a format channel for the individual circuit. It has the energy that moves in a pulse, and it is subject to melancholy. This is an important channel in our experience, and all the channels, of course, the whole mechanic is important, and yet there's a significance somehow to this channel of mutation and to the 60th gate. I've been invited to speak at the online Rave Festival in January, and I have chosen gate 60 as my topic. If you're thinking of attending the festival, by the way, you can find a link in this video in the description somewhere. It will give you 10% off the ticket price. And if you can't find the link, then just go to the Rave Festival website, and in the discount code bit, put Bambaji Fest, all in capital letters. And then you will get your 10% off the ticket price. And you'll be supporting me at the same time, for which I'm very grateful. Thank you. So this is the fourth line of gate 43. I'll be back again for the fifth line tomorrow. Thank you very much for joining me. As always, go gently.